Hello everyone. All right, in today's video, we are going to discuss metaphysics and morality. Morality is sometimes also termed ethics. They're going to be used interchangeably. So there you have it. I do a longer lecture on these questions, about an hour. They also include questions of things like epistemology and other various themes around these two questions, but I just want to focus in on these two questions for our time here. All right. So the short version of both of these, all right? Metaphysics is the study of what exists. What you are looking at is the natural state of things. You are trying to figure out how the world actually works. All right. So this could include questions of physics. This could also include questions of human nature. All right. How the world actually works. Now, that's one question that academics ask and they try to answer. All right. Another question that academics try to ask, especially in the social sciences when it comes to people who are interested in creating public policy, right, in which they're trying to sort of work around the edges of how the world works in order to, create different social structures, in order to create new policies to sort of change the world, for instance. These fall under morality or ethical questions, right? And what ethics is asking how should a person act in the world based on how the world actually works, right? So, a couple more questions over here. What is your proper role in the world? How should you behave in the world based on how the world actually exists? These are questions that are of interest to somebody who is studying ethics, all right? Now, I do want to make a caveat here and say that things like morality and ethics, they don't have to be constrained to religious doctrine, which they sometimes, they definitely have a relationship with religious doctrine. They sound like religious terms, but they're not necessarily that, right? There are ways in which you can move through the world properly based on these metaphysical answers outside of having some sort of faithful or religious convictions. All right. So let's take a couple examples of what morality and ethics might look like based on metaphysics, based on the answers that metaphysics might provide us. So here's some examples, right? So you look at something like drugs and alcohol. All right. The metaphysics questions and answers on drugs and alcohol would look at things like what do drugs and alcohol do to the body? So you're looking at biological questions, all right? How does it affect the body? What are the long-term effects of these things on the body? How does it actually work, all right? The morality question around drugs and alcohol, again, you can take it out of the realm of, God doesn't want you to, smoke weed and be an alcoholic. Take that out of the question for a second. The morality or the ethical question around drugs and alcohol is based on what I know with regard to how drugs and alcohol actually affect the body, what should my relationship be to drugs and alcohol? How often should I partake in them? What should I do with regard to temperance? What are the long-term effects that these things are going to have on me, right? And again, it's not a question of what do I want the world to be, right? I'm a person who really likes wine, right? I would love to have a glass of wine every day, right? I know that is a bad idea, not because I don't want to, right? I know that's a bad idea because I know how the world actually works, and I know how human biology reacts to the constant consumption of alcohol. I know that it's not going to be good, right? It's not going to be good for me physically. It's not going to be good for mentally. I'm not going to be as clear-headed, right, every day. I'm going to put on a couple extra pounds. I'm going to be a little bit more sluggish, right? There's long-term effects of alcohol based on how alcohol actually interacts with the body, and based on that knowledge, that metaphysical knowledge, I need to act in a way that helps me make sure that I have a healthy relationship, with my wine consumption. All right. So that's an interesting, that's one sort of small, interesting example that you can look at, right? Some other less controversial examples could be something like diet and exercise, right? So how does the world actually work? Well, you look at things like nutrition, right? How does food affect the body? And based on what we know about how certain foods affect the body, I need to curate my diet and exercise routine to the food choices that I make, right? So I like pizza, right? I could eat pizza every day, but I know that it's going to have a certain effect on my body. So the ethical question is, what should my proper relationship with pizza be based on what I know pizza was going to do to my body in the long term, right? So how the world actually works. How the world actually works, that should drive your behavior, right? Not how I want it to work. I wish that I could eat pizza every day and that I would be in great shape and I would not be foggy headed, and that, I wish, there's plenty of people who don't want to exercise every day. Like, I never want to exercise. And I wish that I would just, be, I wish I would be, strong and fast and everything else without any exercise. But the hard truth of the matter is like, that's not how the world works. Right? Biology works in certain ways with regard to diet and exercise. You're the one, right, who has to dictate. You're the one who has to align your life with how the metaphysics of biology actually works. All right. So these are the ethical questions. How should I act based on how the world actually works? All right. Some things that are a little bit more controversial. We can look at something like schools and educational policies. So how do students actually learn in K through 12? And then based on that, we make decisions on how to structure the classroom, right? Now, there's lots of debates on this. A very controversial one is in regard to the learning differences, or if there's learning differences, and plenty of debates to be had between boys and girls, right? So based on what we know with regard to the learning differences between boys and girls on a metaphysical level, right? How does the world actually work? How do boys actually learn versus how do girls actually learn? How should we be structuring the classroom? There's some interesting data out there that says, that comes to the conclusion that boys are more active, which, seems plausible. Boys are more active. They need more breaks. They need more recess time. They need more PE time. Girls can sit longer. All right, girls have the ability to focus and sit in a classroom for longer periods than boys do. Boys need a break, every 30 minutes or so to get up and run around and be physical with each other. They drain their energy, they come back, they sit in the room, and then they can focus again. Girls seem to be able to focus longer. Right? Now, you can be a person who says, look, I wish that boys and girls were exactly the same. I wish they learned exactly the same. We could put them all in the same. We don't have to segregate boys and girls in different classrooms. We can just put them in the same classroom and they're all going to get the same material. I wish that was true, right? You can be that person. But the metaphysics question is not concerned with what you wish was true. It's concerned with what is actually true. And if it is actually true that boys and girls need space to learn differently in the classroom, then the ethical question becomes, okay, how should we structure the classroom to make sure that boys and girls are getting material in a way that is useful for both of them, right? How should I structure my classroom with regard to recess time and PE time, and how often do students need breaks? How long can students focus until they're not going to be able to focus anymore on certain math problems or grammar problems that are put on the blackboard? All right. So how do boys and girls actually learn? The metaphysics question, right? And then how do I structure my learning environment if I'm a teacher in order to make sure that I'm meeting the needs of the students with regard to what actually is happening? All right. The last example I'll come up with that is very controversial for a metaphysics question involves family structure. Right? So what is the probability, right? So this is a probability question. What is the best family environment to raise a child in? What family structure is most likely to lead to long-term success for the child? So things like educational achievement, income status later in life, avoiding the criminal justice system, avoiding teenage pregnancy, avoiding drugs and alcohol, right? Etc. Right? So what is the best family structure to raise a child in order to play the probability game of setting that child up for the best probability of achieving success, right? And then the morality and ethical question becomes, okay, then how should we try to structure a society to put children in those types of family situations as often as possible? Right? Now, there are plenty of ways to have a family, right? There's two parents, mom and dad biological, there's two parents adopted, there are same-sex couples, there are single moms, there are single dads, there are kids who are raised by their grandma, grandpa, aunts and uncles, friends, what have you. There are lots of ways to have family. Divorce, blended families, all this kind of stuff, right? The metaphysics question says we're going to look at all these different family structures and which one, probability-wise, is going to lead to the best long-term the best probability that that child is going to have long-term success along the lines of educational achievement, income status, avoiding criminal justice system, like not being arrested for it. All right, that's what we look at, right? And then the ethical question is, okay, let's make sure that we're putting as many kids as possible into those types of situations, right? Now, the answer that you probably all are thinking of with regard to the metaphysics question is it shows that mom and dad married, biologically have a kid, right? And mom and dad stay together and raise that kid that is biologically theirs, right? That is the best probability situation for long-term that estimates long-term success for that child, right? Now, have I been a part of different types of families? Yes, right? So this isn't a morality discussion with regard to, all other families structures are terrible, right? Again, we're looking at issues of probability. Are there plenty of single moms out there who raise kids who go on to lots of great successes in life? Yes, absolutely, right? But again, we're playing the game of probability to make sure that we can set the most individuals up for success, or at the beginning of a child's life, we want to try to figure out, without knowing any other information, what would be the best situation to raise this child in? And that's the game that's getting played here. All right. So that's the morality and ethical question: is how should a person act in the world based on how the world actually works, right? What is your proper role? How should you behave, right? Based on what we know about things like drugs and alcohol, diet and exercise, learning environments, family structures, etc. There are avenues that are better for all of us than some other avenues, right? Is it true that there are lots of things that I wish weren't true about the world? Yeah. Do I wish that I could, drink wine every day and eat pizza every day? Yeah. Do I wish that all students would sit patiently and nicely in their seats for 8 hours a day while I lectured and they would just absorb all the material? Yes. Do I wish it was true that no matter a person's family structure, that person had just as good a chance as everybody else for long-term success in their life? Yeah, I wish that was all true, right? The reality is that it's not all true, right? And therefore, we need to make sure that we are curating our own lives and putting our lives in a direction that is going to work for us. And sometimes that means making sacrifices. Excuse me. Sometimes that means we have to change our behavior. Sometimes that means that we have to eat broccoli instead of ice cream. Sometimes we have to make hard decisions about educational policies and family structure policies, right? But this is how the metaphysics question and the ethics question are related to each other, right? Figure out how the world works, not how you want it to work, right? Figure out how the world actually works. And once you figure out how the world actually works, you have to start thinking about ways to change and adjust your behavior so your behavior is in line with how the world actually works and not the other way around, right? Too many of us want to say, this is the life I want to live. I'm going to go change reality. You're never going to change reality, right? Figure out how reality actually works, and then you got to figure out how can I change and modify my behavior to put myself in the best possible position for long-term success. All right. That's the relationship between metaphysics and morality or ethics, and I'll see you next time.